Rise from your grave.
Sonic the Hedgehog is a series I grew up with from the Mega Drive games, the cartoons, to its 3D outings. While I haven't caught up with the latest games, I still go back and replay a bunch of the old ones. I even made a video on why I love the character so much. However, there was a time where I was done with the franchise back when 06 was released. If you've been on the internet for any gaming channel, you probably already know how infamous 06 was, with one of the creators, Yuji Naka, leaving the project midway through development. I played a few levels at a friend's house when I was a teenager, and found how terrible it was that I briefly gave up on the series. Even his surprising reveal in Super Smash Bros. Brawl didn't convince me to come back to the franchise. I was a lot younger at the time, so I was being over-dramatic, as you tend to do in your teens, but it was probably one of my earliest memories of being let down with a video game. It was going to take some heavy convincing to return to the Blue Blur's adventures, and that's when I saw this. Sonic Rush style gameplay in gorgeous 3D, multiple routes, going super fast. I was hyped. This is what I wanted to see. And not to say I hated multiple playstyles, the adventure games are some of my favourites in the series, but I felt it was one of the reasons why 06 failed, and the reason why I wanted the franchise to go back to simplicity, focusing on what made me love the Blue Hedgehog to begin with, and the team behind it thought so too. Well, so I thought. The director and lead designer for Unleashed, Yoshihisa Hashimoto, wanted to make Sonic Unleashed the best Sonic game ever, and that includes the Genesis era titles, and hoped that even people who haven't played the Sonic games will feel, wow, Sonic is back. They wanted to focus on just one character, so they could polish the mechanics to a T and not worry about handing on how other characters would play out. While having a variety of gameplay styles can be fun, it can be easy to mess it up, like with technical issues or some ferrets not vibing with one of the gameplay styles. Unfortunately, my hope for one core gameplay style did not last, as soon after I saw a trailer showing off the Werehog. At this point, I was concerned. I remember playing Unleashed on the Xbox around the time it came out, and I remember at least having a good time despite not enjoying the Werehog gameplay. It didn't become a new favourite, but it did at least make me a fan of the series again. It's been ages since I've touched Unleashed on the Xbox, but I've at least played it beforehand, unlike the Nintendo Wii version, which is a brand new experience for me. Unlike today where the same games on different consoles are functionally the same with only technical differences, there was a time where sometimes you were getting a different experience despite sharing the same name. This was common when porting HD games to the less powerful Nintendo Wii. The HD versions for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 were developed by Sonic Team, but the Wii and PlayStation 2 versions were developed by Dimps, who were known for the handheld titles. I'll be covering both the Sonic Team and Dimps version today and see if they are fun to play. Firstly, I will be covering the plot of the game, which is similar in both versions. The story begins with a cinematic bang, with Sonic fighting Eggman's armada in space, then turning into Super Sonic, chasing after the mad scientist. The cinematic intro plays before the title screen in the Wii version. In spite of Sonic having the upper hand, Eggman sends our hero into a trap, absorbing the Chaos Emerald's power and splitting the world into pieces to unleash the monster of the week, Gaia. The machine that drained the Emerald's power also caused Sonic to become the Altered Beast. Eggman opens the airlock to send the Altered Beast back down to Earth. During Sonic's impact to Earth, he apparently hits a creature who is eventually called Chip and causes him to use his memory. Feeling guilty about what happened, he helps Chip to find his memories, and this is where their world adventure begins. Throughout the event's end, he must visit each Sky Temple scattered across the globe to give back the Chaos Emerald's power and restore Earth back to normal. It's your usual Sonic experience of stopping Eggman's nefarious plans and beating up the giant monster in his previous 3D outings. However, the usual party of Knuckles, Shadow, Rouge, and the others are nowhere to be seen, with the exception of Tails and Amy, who don't have much involvement in the story. Instead, most of the focus is on Sonic and the newcomer Chip. I do miss the extended cast, but I think focusing on a smaller cast was a good choice for this situation, especially after the last attempt. Plus, I think this is one of the best Sonic has ever been as a character, at least in the video games. He is usually the emotional anchor that makes other characters grow, with this game being the perfect example, helping Chip get his memories back while also letting him enjoy the wonders of the world. Sonic isn't usually one who struggles with eternal conflicts, but thanks to the combination of Eggman's machine and Darkdire's power of negativity, we see him transformed into a monster, and how that affects himself and the people around him sees him. There are scenes where he seems sad, like when he sees Amy in Spandonia and the very first meeting with Chip, but it's also proof showing Sonic's strong-willed nature. It's pretty basic compared to many other stories I've seen, but for a game for all age groups, it's a good lesson about trying your best even during your lowest points. Overall, it was a fun story. What adds more flavour to the story are the locales you visit and the people you meet. In Japan, the game was towards Sonic World Adventure, which I think perfectly encapsulates this game. Each stage you visit is based on real-life countries, such as the starting area Apotos being based on the Greece island Mykonos with its white architecture and windmills, to Chunnan being exactly identical to China, most notably the Great Wall. Sonic has mostly been great in level theming, and I think out of pure aesthetics, Unleashed is up there as some of my favourites. The visuals still hold up today, putting in a lot of effort, where most of the time playing during the day levels, you are blasting through them. It must have been tough putting it all together. If you are playing on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, there are slowdowns, most notably during the daytime Adabat stage, as well as the loading screens. The PlayStation 3 version has it worse when it comes to loading screen times. The version I played was the 360 version, which I played on the Xbox Series, which thankfully didn't have a lot of slowdown issues. The music perfectly captures the feeling of these lands, such as Missouri's use of instruments like the xylophones, cikaras, and drums. Or Empire City's heavy use of the jazz instruments like the saxophone and pianos that were popular during 1920s America. These instruments are used in most of the variations of the areas from the hub worlds, day stages, and the night stages. I think out of any Sonic soundtracks, this is at least top 5 for me. The day stages give you that adrenaline rush while keeping with the world's use of instruments, while the nighttime stages, while not as fast paced, still perfectly captures the mood of the situation. In fact, I think the nighttime stage tracks don't get enough love, and that mostly has to do with the battle theme is a good track by itself, but I think it interrupts the mood of what are perfectly good tracks. and battles are what you will be doing in most of these stages, at least in HD versions, so it eventually became background noise for me. Music is subjective though, and there are plenty of games, most notably JRPGs, that have the one battle track, which I'm usually okay with, so it might not bother you. I personally would have loved to hear battle variations of the nighttime stages instead that increases the intensity of the fights, but doesn't interrupt the tracks in the background. One of the things I really love about the music in this game are the results themes. More specifically, if you get an E rank at the end of a level, the performers will play worse, which may seem like a gut punch for the player, but I found it hilarious. Like Sonic Adventure, Ys has multiple hub areas with people roaming around, but unlike Adventure, which only has ability upgrades and emblems, these hub areas offer various collectibles and optional missions for you. I didn't really bother with them, barring one or two, as it's mostly replaying the same missions with different objectives. While I don't really care for the content that the hub areas provide, just roaming around some of these areas, particularly Spandonia, felt nice, making most of these places feel authentic. Unfortunately, I will say a lot of them are very small, mostly being one small circle, with not much interactivity besides interacting with the locals. But I guess that makes it easier for people who just want to go to the next destination. I do like when you talk to someone, you can see their national flag next to them. These ferrets aren't complete, but visually I think the people blend well within the franchise. I've praised the simple yet character-driven narrative, the music, and the overall presentation. But to me, the Sonic series' main appeal is the gameplay. Despite the developers' original intention on focusing on one character, the team instead went to have multiple playstyles, which are the daytime boost stages and the nighttime beat 'em up stages. While the former was used for some games afterwards, the latter remained exclusive to Ys. Firstly, you have the daytime boost stages, in which Sonic blasts through various courses at high speeds. These became my favourite part of the game, just in going incredibly fast, attempting to find a quickest route to beat the stage. These courses are huge, with multiple branching paths that are fun to replay. It feels like the Genesis era that the devs were aiming to achieve, but it also feels like the classic arcade races that I used to love, even having the checkpoint timers, the jingle that plays every time you go past them, and how counting the kilometers after each checkpoint. The racing genre connection doesn't stop there, as controlling the Blue Blur feels like controlling a car in those racing games, as he has a lot of traction, which can lead to getting hit by an enemy from a distance or falling into a pit easier. Sonic has a drift button, like a car, which unfortunately does not work so well, especially with the boost ability, as for example in Act 3 in Missouri, you are going around a racetrack with no barriers, which is designed around the drift mechanic, but it usually causes me to fall off the course. It was actually easier just to run normally and jump in the corners. The home attack makes a return, which is fun to use. However, unlike the other titles performing it comes with pressing X or square button after the jump button, instead of pressing the jump button twice, which caused me a few deaths. It's not a big deal, it probably will just catch you off guard if you played any of Sonic's outings. What annoys me though is that the home attack command is the same as the boost button, which caused me a few deaths. Thankfully, the abilities like the slide, the stomp, and the twister are fun to pull off that are used frequently throughout the game. I remember enjoying the daytime stages a lot back then, and even now, I say they still hold up well. But I remember disliking the nighttime stages, and now I would say my opinion has changed, and they are serviceable, but they aren't anything special, especially compared to other combat-centric games. You have your standard light and medium attacks, as well as throws, guards, and a Devil Trigger light. but it isn't anything complex that you should spend your time to perfect. There are tons of moves that the Werehog can learn by leveling up, but most of the time you are using the same combos and throws. I only use the more out there moves to spice things up. Unleashed also has a leveling system for both characters. While as regular Sonic it doesn't offer much besides max speed and maybe boost power, for Werehog Sonic this affects a bunch of things like strength, health, combat abilities, and many more, which you have the option to pick which area you want to focus on. If you mostly focus on strength and health with maybe a couple levels in combat, you can easily breeze through the night stages. By itself, the nighttime stages are serviceable, but I think it doesn't blend well with the fast octane platforming stages. It feels like two different games in one disc, which I think may pull some people away from Unleashed. Some people may even prefer the nighttime stages to the daytime stages. It would be like if you're playing a turn-based RPG, but then the game asks you to do a mandatory kart racer segment. It's not like, say, Yakuza 0, where the non-beat-em-up parts are optional that even enhances the experiences. Both gameplay styles are mandatory. The worst thing for me is that you are spending most of your time playing the nighttime segments, which are younger and that can last for 10 to 15 minutes, than the daytime segments that maybe last around 5. There are multiple acts for both stages, but these are entirely optional and are mostly just reused segments of the Act 1 stages. For me, my least favourite part of the game are the Sun and Moon medals, which I think just pads out the game. You have to get a certain amount of Sun and Moon medals in order to unlock the later levels. While it's not much of a problem in the first half, it can be a pain later on. It works well for the Werehog slower levels as you can take your time exploring, but for Sonic's high speed levels, these can be a pain to get as you are going too fast to see one coming and you cannot really go back without restarting as some areas will be unavailable during certain moments. The Wii version of Unleashed still keeps the regular and Werehog Sonic gameplay, but they do have some noticeable differences. First of all the Wii version has a completely different set of levels and has removed both Empire City and Missouri with the exception of the boss fight with the Ed Beetle. There are also no explorative hub worlds and are instead replaced with point and click segments, which isn't as interesting but does at least make you interact with the locals. The daytime segment still uses the boost formula but makes some notable changes. The homing attack now goes back to pressing the jump button twice, though you can still go to the HD version's method, which is nice. The boost itself works a bit differently as it can only be used a certain number of times instead of gradually going down, though the way you get boost is relatively the same by hitting enemies, getting rings and drifting. It makes you think about the best time to use it. The Werehog levels are a bit different as instead of the light and medium attacks, each button uses a different part of the arm, meaning some moves are different. The Wii version was designed with the Wiimote and nunchuck, so you will be stationing them when performing actions like fighting and climbing. I never used it as the game also provides the GameCube and classic controller. The latter is what I used as I imagine stating the Wiimote and nunchuck would be tiring. The Werehog also levels up differently as you are forced on a linear path gaining new abilities the game wants you to learn, which I think makes it slightly more challenging. The Werehog levels are a lot shorter than the HD version, however both the regular and Werehog Sonic levels have multiple acts, which I'm mixed on. While the Werehog stages are shorter than their HD counterparts, it feels as long as you play these 3 to 5 minute plus levels back to back. The daytime stages have it worse as they repeat the same layout for these acts but with different mission objectives like get 100 rings or beat the same stage but in less than 2 minutes. And unlike the HD versions or even the older games where these were optional, these are mandatory and play back to back. It feels like padding just to meet the hour quota to justify its original release price. On the plus side, at least the medals are handled better as you get them depending on your rank of the course, which works better for the high speed gameplay. Both versions have their pros and cons, with the HD version doing some things better than the Wii version, and vice versa. No, if I have to pick which one is better, it's the HD version. No, not by much. Overall, Sonic Unleashed is a decent game that does a lot right, but has pacing issues and classic gameplay styles that may not be for everyone. Thankfully, these games are cheap to get online. I got both of these under £10 each. These games are stocked on past consoles for the most part, with no PC release, but the 360 version can be played on the Xbox One and Series X, which is the ideal way to play it, especially with the performance boost. While it does have some issues, it was a right step in the direction of crafting the boost formula, as both Colors and Generations are great games, with some of the issues I have with the game being fixed. Have you played Sonic Unleashed? If so, what do you think of it? And if you played both versions, which one do you prefer? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I hope you have a wonderful day.